The lead up to Dragons Dogma 2 has been a complete roller coaster. After the previews dropped, there was quite a bit of concern over the fact that there's only 10 vocations and it's 30 FPS on console, but then they announced and released the character creator for Dragons Dogma 2 and the sentiment changed almost immediately. Now that we are about 11 days from the release of Dragons Dogma 2, there has been a ton of news that is released. We're also going to talk about some of the insane character creations that we've seen. Could we still get a playable demo for Dragons Dogma 2? When are we going to get to download the game? And so much more, guys. We have a lot to talk about leading up to the launch, so check the video chapters for easy viewing and let's get into it. So first and foremost, we have to talk about the new character creator and storage demo that we got, which I have to say is probably the best character creation tool that I've ever seen in a video game, and it's simply genius marketing. It is better than we could have ever imagined. The deep customization options that leads to almost infinite possibilities with this game is wild. Like, if you want to play as Kratos, you could do that. Perhaps you want Geralt of Rivia, Shaggy, all as your pawns. That is possible because of this insane creation tool by Capcom. It's not quite the playable demo that a lot of people were hoping for during the Capcom showcase, but the fact of the matter is this free tool is having people spend countless hours working on their characters and making cool creations. That alone is going to force people to buy this game. Like, if you've already invested hours of your time into a creation tool, you're probably going to end up buying that game on release. Now, for those of you that are unaware about this tool, you guys can download it right now. It is available on the PlayStation, Xbox Series XS, and on Steam. So you're able to jump on right now and customize the look of your main character, the Arisen, and you could also customize your main pawn. Now, in the character creator, you could store up to 5 characters of each, the Arisen and your main pawn, and then once the game is out, then you could transfer all of the data from the character creator into the main game. So treat this as like a mini demo where your information can be carried over. Honestly, if you've not played around with the Dragons Dogma 2 character creator, I recommend doing that now, because I probably spent about 3 to 4 hours just making my main character and my main pawn. So I would say get that out of the way for the game release so you could focus on playing rather than spending the first 5 hours on launch day just creating your character. So recently, the game's director for Dragons Dogma 2, Hideaka Itsuno, and the game's producer, Yoshiaki Hirabayashi, were both interviewed by automatonmedia.com, and in that interview, they both went over some pretty interesting details regarding Dragons Dogma 2 that we're going to go over now. So the first question was asked, how did you decide to make Dragons Dogma 2? To which Hirabayashi responded, it has been over 10 years since Dragons Dogma and Dragons Dogma Dark Arisen were released. In the meantime, we've been working on Japan exclusive titles such as Dragons Dogma Online and the mobile game Dragons Dogma Quest, but we had been considering a single player sequel to the series for a long time. Capcom was aware that Itsuno was essential to the Dragons Dogma IP, and that sequel would involve a large scale development team. Itsuno finished Devil May Cry 5 project a little over 5 years ago, and this is when the environment for the development of Dragons Dogma 2 was ready. It was not a sudden decision, but something that had been in the works for a long time. The question was then directed to Itsuno, did you have the idea of Dragons Dogma 2 on your mind for a while? To which Itsuno responded, actually, before I started working on DMC5, I was given the choice of either making Dragons Dogma 2 or DMC5 first, and I decided to work on DMC5. So basically, the idea of Dragons Dogma 2 had been on my mind the whole time. As for our development policy, we decided to stick with the basic concepts of the original Dragons Dogma. There had originally been so much we wanted to do in Dragons Dogma, however, due to constraints related to time, manpower, technology, and hardware, we had to give up on our ideas. So after the release, we received a lot of feedback from users, such as having only one country feels bare. With Dragons Dogma 2, our goal was to try to incorporate these ideas and feedback as much as possible. The next question was asked, what are some specific features that you weren't able to include in Dragons Dogma that we could look forward to in the sequel? To which Itsuno responded, for starters, there was many technological shortcomings at that time in terms of creating a proper open world. For example, when entering a densely populated area such as a castle or dungeon, there had to be a brief loading time to switch from the data for the distant view to the detailed view for the interior, which prevented a seamless playing experience. However, in Dragons Dogma 2, all dungeons, towns, and house interiors will be seamlessly connected. Also related to memory is the number of NPCs, which is dramatically higher in the sequel. In Dragons Dogma 2, if we had 2 large boss monsters appear, we would struggle to get the quote small fry monsters in there too. But in the sequel, even having 3 large bosses at the same time is no problem. So the player can experience stumbling upon the next boss while running away from the previous one, and running away will now come with a risk, adding a dose of realism to the chase. In Dragons Dogma 2, we were able to introduce the 2 countries, Vermund and Batal, as well as Dragon's Plague, the contagious disease that infects pawns. These were also ideas that we were not able to implement in the previous title. The AI behaviors, which were simplified due to the limitations of the PS3, are simulated more realistically in the sequel. Another big feature of Dragons Dogma 2 is the introduction of a new race, the Beastren. This too had been an idea for the first game, but as we struggled to include a large number of fur-covered characters, we were not able to implement it. The sequel will feature the Beastren veteran and their country Batal, and players will be able to choose the Batal race for their Arisen. The next question that was posed was, in Dragons Dogma 1, you could develop an affinity with NPCs. Will there be something like that in the sequel? To which Itsuno responded, there will be a lot of it, and it will be even more pronounced. It's almost the entire reason why we made the game open world. There will be many events that occur and don't occur depending on affinity, and relationships between NPCs will be important. For example, if you raise your affinity with the parent of a child, your affinity with the child will increase as well. On the other hand, NPCs can also fall out with each other. We've quote powered up the affinity feature a lot and sneaked in a lot of things, as Itsuno laughs. The other question that was asked was, will things like NPCs dying during town raid events happen? To which Itsuno responded, our basic premise since the start of the series has been creating a fantasy world simulator, so NPCs dying is a normal occurrence. If there's an NPC that you care for in a town, you will need to protect them as you fight or hold them and run. Hirabayashi then jumped in and said, however, there are wake stones, resurrection items, so even if an NPC dies, all is not lost. It's just that for a simulator, it's unnatural to have beings that are completely invincible. It then posed the question, compared to the previous title, how much has the map in Dragons Dogma 2 been expanded? How many more towns can we expect? To which Itsuno responded, we always say that the map in Dragons Dogma 2 is 4 times the size of the previous one, but we haven't measured it exactly, and the development team believes that it will be much larger. Hirabayashi responded, Dragons Dogma 2 is an experience-driven game as opposed to a story-driven game. The field is not simply vast with no purpose, but it's designed to provide enjoyable experiences with each minute as you traverse it, and we are confident in the volume of the map in terms of its density rather than the size. They then followed up with, what was your policy in terms of the map's density? To which Itsuno said, this was another concept from the original game that we decided to power up in the sequel. We have packed Dragons Dogma 2 full of features that we were unable to include from the previous game, and we have put to use a lot of the knowledge we've cultivated in the meantime. Hirabayashi responded, we want to give the players a worthwhile and fun experience for the time that they're investing in the game. However, we do not want to impose anything on them. So from the sounds of it, it seems like they took everything that they did correctly with Dragons Dogma 1 and then just powered it up, quote unquote, and made this game the ultimate Dragons Dogma experience. Rather than having a story-driven game that kind of walks you through the game, you're essentially just dropped into a giant open world, and you just kind of have to figure out things as you go. It's the part that I enjoyed the most about Elden Ring, is really having no sense of direction. It's just kind of go and do that thing. And it's the same with Breath of the Wild and a game like Skyrim, where if you see that mountain in the distance, you could go there. So moving right along, with there being only 11 days until Dragons Dogma 2's official launch date, what is the likelihood that a playable demo is happening? Now, with the Capcom Highlights Day 2 happening today, as of recording this video, it doesn't seem like they're going to be giving us any news regarding Dragons Dogma 2 during that showcase. At least that's what the description says. Could things change? Possibly. Could it be like a surprise announcement? Maybe. But I would say that right now, if we don't get it within the next couple days, I would not expect a playable demo prior to the release of Dragons Dogma 2, which I know that news could be pretty disappointing for some people, especially those that are on the fence regarding the console FPS situation. I would say that the developers are actively working on a day one patch for Dragons Dogma 2 to improve the overall frame rate and frame timing specifically. Right now, it seems like the frame timing is not the best, but I'm sure that day one update will smooth things out to ensure that we get a somewhat consistent uncapped frame rate, and that will hopefully be ready by the time the game is launched. It could be that we have to wait until post-launch for that update. So yeah, these next 10 days will be very telling. If we get a demo, that means they probably have the update done, but only time will tell. So moving right along, we have some preload details for Dragons Dogma 2, as it looks like the preload has gone live for the Xbox Series consoles. Xbox preloads usually happen pretty early. Now, the size of Dragons Dogma 2 will be 69.94 gigabyte, and that was the update that people got for Dragons Dogma 2. So I'm guessing after the day one patch, the game will likely be just over 70 gigabytes, which is honestly a good size. And we still don't know when the preload will happen for PlayStation 5. That's usually about a week before launch. And then the PC copy via Steam will be way later than that. I'm sure we'll get official details for preloading from Capcom sometime relatively soon, especially since the Xbox preload has went down. The hype is real for Dragons Dogma 2. I cannot wait to play this game on the 22nd. Hopefully we get a playable demo. If not, it is what it is. At least we got to make our characters and our pawns. Let me know what creations you've been able to do in the character creator. Hit the like button if you've enjoyed the video, subscribe with your notifications turned on, and until next time, this has been Wes, and I'll talk to you guys again soon.